Let's talk about what the president calls the one big beautiful bill. You and I have discussed this multiple times before. It's now gone to the Senate. They're making changes. It'll come back to the House. We'll see what happens. If you, Julie Johnson, Congresswoman from Farmers Branch, had, the say on all this, what would your tax cuts be? And would you include any spending cuts?
I think this Trump bill we have right now is just an irresponsible bill. We always want to see a strong business climate. I'd like to see the Affordable Care Act credits. We want people to be able to afford health care. I would definitely have child tax credits. We want to see people have affordable child care. I have a foster care tax credit bill to incentivize people to come foster parents. I mean, I think there's absolutely things that we would do. I would increase the SALT tax deduction. Texas has high property taxes. So there's several things in terms of tax credits that I think we would do. And I think in terms of spending cuts, there's a lot of programs that we can tighten our belt on for sure. But I think that the way that Republicans have gone about it with this sledgehammer approach without prudent, responsible hearings, without prudent and responsible digging into the programs that work and that don't work. I mean, there's a vast amount of programs that are paid for in the United States government. I certainly wouldn't put $45 billion on a wall that's not going to work, and so I think there's that. And so I'm for a balanced budget. I think we need a responsible budget in this country. We cannot continue adding to our deficit. We're heading down a financial crisis. Our credit rating has already been lowered. And so we absolutely need to come together. But doing all of this, having all this pain on the American people solely so that about 1,000 people can have a tax break is irresponsible and is not good governance and is not fiscally sound, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, as far as the tax cuts are concerned, the Republicans say if these tax cuts, the income taxes on individuals and married folks, will go up if this is not made permanent.
Well,
Uh,
I disagree on that. I think that certainly I want tax relief for middle class folks, just like everybody else, and I would absolutely support that. But what I'm objecting to is the tax breaks that he's giving to the very wealthiest of folks with fuzzy math of interest and tax loopholes and this sort of thing that really only benefits the exceedingly wealthy people in this country at vast sums of money. And so that's what this is about. This is about Trump giving tax cuts on the backs of working families and working people in this country and in Texas, so that his rich friends can pay less taxes when they can absolutely afford to do so. And I don't think that's right.
what about business tax cuts as far as like allowing them to have expenses, write off their expenses so that they can grow and invest in themselves?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We need a healthy business environment. Businesses need to be able to write off reasonable expenses. Um, and that's part of the business, the thing, they have expenses. Taxes are designed to tax income and not total revenues per se. And so income is, revenues generated minus expenses. So expenses are things that should be able to be factored into a business environment. Heck, we want businesses to succeed in this country. That's part of our entrepreneurial spirit. There's a whole bunch of people watching this show that want to own their own business one day. We want to make it to where the tax policy allows them to do that, where that business can say, hey, yeah, I can hire that next employee. I can create that next job. We want and that is good for business. It's good for Texas. It's good for our country. But what we have in this particular bill is not just about that. It goes way beyond protecting small businesses from having expenses. It goes into creating a tax cuts for very, very wealthy people at the cutting of benefits to the extent of cutting 16 million people off of Medicaid. I don't think that's right.
So let's talk about Medicaid because I went back. You and I have talked about it. I've talked about it with other Democratic members of Congress, Republican members of Congress. And I went back and I asked the House Energy and Commerce Committee, which oversees Medicaid. And I asked about, as far as the Medicaid cuts. I was told that the Medicaid budget is still going to grow. It's just the cuts are from the growth, not from the original budget. Is that true? That's what I was told. That it's
That's not my understanding, but they're cutting a budget, and they were given a directive to cut $860 billion out of that budget for Medicaid, which is going to kick 16 million people off of critical health insurance. It's interesting. The chambers, Dallas Chamber was in my office today. Businesses across the country, so many advocacy groups, everyone is opposed to these Medicaid cuts. The only people that are pushing it is Trump, and now Republicans are acquiescing to that because it only benefits Trump and his friends. But I think kicking 16 million people off of health care is not a good way to go.
and because I've asked Republicans about it, and they say what they're trying to focus on is pregnant women, the poor, and the disabled, and able-bodied people. They say should certainly have to go and work at least 20 hours a day in order to get benefits.
Mhm.
What's wrong with that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with able-bodied people. The problem is that our minimum wage is $7.75 an hour. The problem is that you can work 40 hours a week in the state of Texas and still be Medicaid eligible because of the income requirements, because they didn't expand it to the higher rates. And this is ridiculous. Medicaid predominantly supports women and kids as it is. And so they're just cutting money out of it. They're cutting benefits. Rural hospitals in Texas are going to close. The Hospital Association in Texas and across the country, the Medical Association, every medical group has been in my office very concerned about these Medicaid cuts. It's what it's going to do to their patients, what it's going to do for their ability to provide care to people in Dallas, people in Texas, people in rural Texas. And they're very, very worried about it. And I'm listening to them.
And let's talk about what's everybody calls the one big beautiful bill. The Senate now has it. There was a report that just came out today as we're speaking that the Senate parliamentarian actually took out some of the cuts to Medicaid, making that virtually going to be impossible unless the Senate Republicans go back at it. So what's your take on the Medicaid cuts, which have obviously caused and sparked a lot of criticism by Democrats?
Well, what we were doing was really more of removing fraud, waste, and abuse, and making sure people that were eligible for the benefits were getting them, and the people that weren't eligible weren't going to get them. And the Democrats, I don't know why they would criticize something like that. And I think the Senate parliamentarian was woefully overstepped in removing them, to be honest. So where do we go from here? And it's troubling to me that an unelected bureaucrat has that much power. Be that as it may, the Senate is a different chamber. But we need to pass the one big beautiful bill primarily for a lot of reasons, but primarily because we want to extend those Trump tax cuts, make them permanent. Because in doing so, I truly believe in all the experts that traditionally have been correct or very accurate in their predictions will have over 4% GDP growth. And if we have that, we can not only have a vibrant economy and get inflation down, but we can also reduce the debt to GDP ratio, which is vitally important for America's future.
Is this going to cut the debt because we're at $36 trillion and reports by the Congressional Budget Office show that the debt is and the deficits are going to only increase with this bill. So what do you say to that?
I say exactly this. The CBO was dead wrong in 2017 when the Jobs Act and the Tax Cut and Job Act passed. Their predictions were kind of doom and gloom and dire, and they were wrong. They were proven wrong. That was 8 years ago. And this is the same thing. They're basing it on a very low growth rate, that those projections over 10 years. And the people that said that the Jobs and Growth Act, or sorry, the Tax Cuts and Job Act would actually grow the economy were proven right. And they're saying that we're going to have over 4% GDP growth. Even if you throw in AI, most experts say that's another 1% just right there with AI. You're looking at 5% growth. You do that for 8 to 10 years, and we're going to not only, again, grow the economy, we're going to cut the deficit and we're going to reduce the national debt.
My last question to you is, what is it going to take for Republicans to get this passed? Because it seems like it's a lot of back and forth.
We need strong will and we need perseverance. And there is a lot of back and forth, and it is frustrating, but democracies and, a republic is a bit messy in the process. I do believe we'll get there. As to when, hard to say. Could be next week. I hope it is. But if it's not, it's going to be soon thereafter. And we will produce a product because we really have to. It's great. Let's talk about Jack policy first. It's great policy for the American economy, for the American people, and for our future. And also, it'll give the American voters time to see what Republican leadership actually does. What's the consequence of Republican leadership? And it'll give them over a year to see the economy grow and inflation get under control. So when they go to the ballot box in November, they can make a truly informed decision in November 26th.